Well, hello and a very warm welcome to episode 7, the penultimate episode of the BA Conference Europe Extra. BA Conference Europe Extra is the informal bits of the conference, which are sort of wrapped around in the breaks of the main conference. And even though it's the penultimate episode, there's only this episode and the next episode to go at this conference, we've still got some fantastic topics and some fantastic guests for you. As a reminder, this is being streamed live, so anything could happen. Touch wood, there haven't been too many technical issues so far. I'm probably jinxing us by saying that. As always, the BA Conference Europe is incredibly social, and it does seem like, particularly today, the number of mentions on social media is getting higher and higher. So if you've not yet tuned in to the hashtag, which is BA2020, it's definitely worth doing that. So, check out on your social network of choice. I tend to use Twitter and LinkedIn. And I've seen people posting selfies of themselves watching the conference. I've seen people sharing notes. I mean, how awesome is that? You know, if you take some notes at a session, maybe share them, and even people who aren't at the conference can get a bit of a glimpse of what's happening there. So it's kind of like crowdsourcing some content that comes out of the conference for the community to use. So just another way that the conference is helping to really cultivate that community of practice amongst all of us, whichever organisation we happen to work for. So we have two fantastic guests on this episode with two really, really important topics. Have you ever wondered how to make your career SOAR? Or maybe, like me, you didn't actually know that SOAR was an acronym that stands for something. Well, we've got a guest who's going to talk to us about that. You might have also wondered about how waste relates to business analysis. Waste in the sort of lean sense, the non-value added sense. Well, we've got another guest to talk to us about that. But we'll move swiftly on to our first guest, Catherine Plumridge. Catherine is Senior BA at Aldermore and delivered a presentation alongside Corinne Thomas on Monday that's got fantastic feedback. I couldn't be there, unfortunately, but this was about how to make our career as BAs SOAR. I'm sure career planning is something that's on all of our minds, so I'm really pleased that Catherine agreed to join us and have a bit of a chat today. So Catherine, thank you for joining us.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Enjoying a really good conference. It's really good.
Yeah, it's different in a digital way, but it works, doesn't it?
It's quite surprising. I was a bit sceptical.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of mix of this and a mix of that, and stuff like this is, it's mind-blowing for me.
Well, we were talking just before we went live about your session, Catherine. I've spoken to a few people who've all said really, really, really positive things. And we were talking about like the breakout rooms and Zoom functionality. It's like collaboration software has come a long way, hasn't it? And which enables these sorts of things. Great. So Catherine, your session with Corinne was entitled "How to Make Your Career SOAR." And the first question I had, well, I didn't even realise initially that SOAR stood for something until I had a sort of sneaky peek at your slides. And I wondered if you could explain for anyone who's not aware of that, what it is and why it might be useful to us.
Yeah, definitely. So like you, until Corinne and I got together and started talking about it, SOAR wasn't a technique that I'd actually heard of or an approach. But it really resonates with career planning. So there's a couple of things, and I'm used to using in SWOT in what I do, but SOAR is a technique for teasing out strategy of an organization. And it calls on collaboration. So it's not just strategy you're defining at the exec, because they have quite a narrow view of where they are. What you do is you include other people. So you're looking at the strengths and opportunities, and similar to SWOT, of your organisation, but not just at the top. You're using all levels of the organisation and outside of the organisation. But the other thing that I really like about it is the A stands for aspiration.
Okay.
So you think strengths and opportunities, and old SWOT goes into weaknesses and threats. You get rid of that stuff, and you look at aspirations, and actually, what would we really, really, really like to do if there was nothing in the way? What could we really aspire to? And again, getting views across the organisation is really good. And then the R is results. So what does success look like? So you're picturing that in your mind. So when you're thinking about a career, you know, we've threaded that through the material with lots of different activities. So it definitely resonates with career planning.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually, Catherine. And as you were talking there, I was thinking about different levels, because you mentioned at an organisational level, and I love the idea of involving different people and getting those different perspectives. You could almost, I could imagine that working at an organisational level, a department level, at a team level, and an individual level. And if you've got an individual whose aspirations align, at least broadly, with the team, and a team whose aspirations align with the organisation, then that's probably a real recipe for success, I'd imagine.
Definitely a good strength, definitely good. And some of the themes in the conference around the context. What is it we're actually looking at, the context? You're not just getting that narrow view, you get the holistic view of people across the organisation, as well as the opportunity to collaborate and listen. So you're not telling the organisation or the group or the team how they're going to do. You collaborate and you come up with it together. So really should be a really powerful tool, and I actually can't wait to go back and use it. Yeah,
it sounds like it's almost democratizing strategy in a way. It's making it, it's meaning that everyone can get involved with co-creating it. So fantastic. So one thing I suspect is that many people watching this will be busy. Right, and you and I know, like, we've all been there. We've stuck on that hamster wheel of just deliver, and it can be hard to get the headspace for career planning. So, would you say that environment plays a part in being able to plan for our own career? And what, if anything, would you suggest someone can do if they are on that hamster wheel? What can they do to get off it, to do more conscious career planning?
Yes, it absolutely can impact that environment. You get too wrapped up in stuff. And what I liked about our session, you gave the individuals the opportunity to stop and think about themselves. And I'm a big advocate of owning your own employability.
Yeah.
So if you can, the organisation, your environment get in the way if you let it. If you don't give yourself time, and you don't find that relevance important, then you're always going to be put upon. However, and some organisations are bad at that, and they will just keep you on that I suppose that wheel. However, some organisations, and when you find yourself in one, they can be really empowering. They will invest in stuff that will help you. Very few of us work in a business analysis organisation. I work in a bank. They could be working in retail. So they're not there to serve my career. I'm there to help them succeed where they want to. But an organisation that supports, has some approaches, and just the ethics that align with you, definitely use them. Spot them, use them, without doubt.
Yeah, it's interesting what you, because that I think you said something like, we own our own employability, and that's something that really resonates with me. And I'm gonna be honest and say it's something I learnt the hard way. Yeah. It took me being put at risk of redundancy to realise, oh my word, I've been doing all my extra hours on this project. I've been flying around, spending all this time on aeroplanes. This was a long time ago, and turning down the opportunity. Turning down the opportunity to be trained because the project seemed so important, and then in a moment, all of that changed, and I was like, well, hang on a minute. So I sort of vowed to never, ever, ever let myself get in that situation before. So so I suppose that's if we're more conscious about it, then hopefully people won't have to have that shock.
Yeah, and it's so hard when that realization clicks in your brain. I know it sounds hard. You're a number on a balance sheet.
Yeah.
And while you're doing something and it's great in that organisation, they have their lifespan in the career. Very few of us work our whole career in one organisation. And this is huge, and you can move around. It has different cultures. I think as a BA, I certainly, have been a BA for many years in many different organisations in different industries. And, I started working for a bank a couple of years ago, and I went, wow, who'd have thought banking could be interesting? And look how that works. And it just, I suppose it re-energises your career, but you've just got to understand what you aspire to.
Absolutely. So which brings us back to that SOAR model again with the A and the aspiration. So and that's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose what this also implies, which again it's probably intuitive, but we don't necessarily always think about it like that, is that if say there is a good employer and they are supporting someone's career, they might not actually be supporting holistic career planning, because holistic career planning might actually mean that the person wants to leave. And some organisations might support that, but others might talk about keeping you in the organisation. So I suppose we have to be a bit, well, as you say, own it and be aware that we might get some support from our employers, but actually we need to occasionally put our hand in our pocket, or our own time to really develop it. So interesting. Okay, so in terms of career planning itself, it's a really tricky topic. Do you have any suggestions for how someone could start?
Yes, I do. And it's called a time traveller technique. Think of the TARDIS, the DeLorean car. You take yourself forward to a point in time. And it doesn't have to be, we use the analogy, the day before you retire, you sat in this perfect job, whatever it is. For me, I can see that. I know you wouldn't believe it. But for others, they probably go, God, I'm probably going to die at my desk. But your career right now, what are you aspiring to? What is going to be your perfect day? What is that ideal role, that thing? It doesn't have to be a name. Just sit and think about it. Think about your strengths, what you're good at. What does that day look like? What are you doing? How do you feel? Don't have to give it a name. You can give it something, but just spend time, be genuine, be yourself. It's your career. It's what you need. If you helicopter yourself into that point, it's much easier to sort of bring yourself back to today in chunks.
Yeah.
So you bring yourself back as a chunk. Well, if I'm going to do that in 5 years' time, in 4 years' time, where do I need to be in order to achieve that in a year? And you just bring yourself back in chunks. Because if you start from today, you're going to go like that. Because in your brain is going to go, oh, yeah, well, I can't do that and I can't do this. And automatically you've narrowed down the possibility. Whereas if you completely clear your brain, what's completely aspirational, and you land yourself there, it just seems more achievable and more doable. That's probably from planning, start at the end.
Yeah, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I've heard people talk about the difference between backcasting and forecasting. With forecasting being you just extrapolate forward, and that will tend to take you on quite a linear path. Whereas with backcasting, you say where you want to go and you work out. So it sounds, and I'm just drawing a synthesis here, because it's like, actually, if you're in a job, often, like we aspire to the next step, don't we? Well, I want to be a lead or a senior, but actually, if you did that backwards planning, you might think, well, actually, no, you know what? I want to go and do a business architecture role or something to get you closer towards that aspiration. So. Interesting. Okay, so without giving too much away from your and Corinne's session, if you had one or a couple of quick takeaways that you would really want people who attended that session to have taken away, what would those be, Catherine?
So I've scribbled something down, because I asked the guys at the end of it, I was going to do this. And said,
awesome.
If we were to share something, so this is hot off the press, taking time to talk to somebody that you actually don't know too well, because this is what the group did. They never, some of them knew each other, but we put them in random pairs and said, okay, do some activity and talk about it. And they did in their rooms. It's fine, which is great. But talking to somebody that you don't know well really helps. But also they're like-minded. So we're all BAs, so they understand sort of the essence of what people enjoy. But it's also quite important to talk to somebody outside of your organisation, because this is what you were alluding to. I mean, I've got people that work for me. Some of them might actually watch this at some point. But, and you sort of try to encourage people for career and what it is they want to do. But actually, you can find that if I'm talking to my line manager, I'm going to tell them what they want to hear. Whereas if you talk to somebody outside of your organisation, you can be a bit more open. So to talk through with somebody you don't know, and ideally from a different organisation, what your aspirations are and what you're thinking, just to talk to somebody about it helps.
Yeah.
But they might be able to feed, but like mentoring, coaching, that's all good advice to find those people out there that can help facilitate, because it's about people as well. There's people that can help you throughout your career. And we said to guys, look at the conference, look at the schedule, look at the different people that are talking. If you've got aspirations in more technical data side, there's a whole work stream down there. go seek out, go find new friends.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? And the external view is so important, and I suppose it's why things like this conference, like IIBA, because the conference is obviously once a year, but there's IIBA events, BCS events, there's the BA Manager Forum, so it's about tapping into those networks as well. So. Great. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for taking time to have a chat. I'm sure people will want to sort of stay in touch. If people want to follow you, get in touch. What's the best way?
So both Corinne and I are both on LinkedIn, so you can find us on LinkedIn. That's our main area. So yeah, find me, and then we'll point you at Corinne, who's got loads and loads and loads of material that supports all of this activity.
Yeah. Fantastic, Catherine. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. So some fantastic advice there from Catherine. I really liked the idea of SOAR, and until I'd seen Corinne and Catherine's session, I'd not been familiar with that as a technique. So I think that's something I'm going to try myself pretty much straight after the conference. That's great, isn't it? One of the things I always think about the conferences is it's almost like an all-you-can-eat buffet. But if you're anything like me at an all-you-can-eat buffet, I tend to try lots of things, and then you feel a bit, you eat a bit too much. And it's important for us to sort of internalise what we're taking in. And I always tend to take notes and set myself actions. So if there's a technique, an idea from a session, you might want to make a note to yourself and actually diarise it. I'm going to do a SOAR, or I'm going to follow some advice from Kay Hardy's session or Steve Whitler's session or whoever's session it happens to be, because making the learning actionable is also so very, very important. So we move on now to our next guest. Have you ever wondered about waste in business analysis? Well, wonder no more, because in our next section, Victoria Banner, who is Senior Product Manager at BP DTS Limited, puts a mirror up to our profession and asks, are we actually being as efficient as we think we are? So Victoria, over to you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the virtual Business Analysis Conference 2020. Bit of a strange setting this year, but hopefully just as rewarding and beneficial for you as it has been in previous years. My name is Victoria Banner. Just wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about waste and lean thinking. So back in the summer this year, I was attending a business analysis managers forum session around business architecture and business analysis. And during one of the side conversations, I was talking to some participants about the need to repeat yourself with stakeholders. So maybe you've had to have multiple conversations around the same subject with stakeholders, or you've had one stakeholder replaced by another, due to business change, etc. And just it got me thinking around waste. So earlier in my career, I spent some time in the manufacturing industry, and lean manufacturing and waste in particular was a big focus for those organisations, and it still is, and in many other organisations as well. The principles of reducing waste, striving for perfection, continuous improvement, etc., very prevalent in the manufacturing industry, and that got me thinking around, actually, is there waste? Has waste crept into my business analysis practices as well? And I started to refresh my memory on those 7 waste principles. So things like overproduction, defects, additional waiting time, movement, that kind of thing. And thought, if you take those concepts and transfer them into, agile ways of working and agile business analysis, there's absolutely scope there for potential waste. So as I was doing some reading and some research, I realised in 2004 that these original 7 principles have actually been updated to be 8 now. And the 8th one that was added was around non-utilisation of talent. and skills and knowledge. And I thought, oh, actually, that again, that there's potentially a big sort of area there that you could look at from agile ways of working and working in a self-organizing team. So I did some digging and some thinking, and if you apply those waste principles to agile business analysis, you can absolutely see how if you're working with your team to develop product backlog items and user stories, if you don't quite get your flow right, there's a big potential there for overproduction. So you might have too many stories ready to sprint that you have to then go back and revisit and kind of refresh people on. So overproduction and waste. Potentially defects, so you maybe don't get access to the right stakeholders to confirm things, and there's rework and defects to be fixed. You might have too much inventory, so too many stories, like I said before. If your flow's not quite right, you might ask your team to wait because your stories aren't quite ready. So there's some waiting waste. And in my past, I may have developed multiple models for a particular design, thinking that was being helpful, but actually, am I overproducing? Am I gold plating things? Extra processing is another waste. But the underutilization of talent was one that really sort of resonated with me. And I think as business analysis professionals and business analysis leaders in particular, we've got a duty there to try and spot some of that waste. I always say to teams that I work with, business analysis is about being professionally nosy and sort of highlighting, potential areas of concern, and waste is one of those. So I mentioned this to my delivery manager recently, and in fact next week's sort of sprint retrospective, we're going to look at waste. I'm going to see if there's some of those kind of unhealthy byproducts of overproduction, waiting, etc., that we can eliminate and really embrace those agile principles of inspection, adaptation, and transparency. So yeah, something for you to take away and think about. If you'd like to know more from me, I'm speaking this year on whether product ownership should be your next career move from a business analysis perspective. So we spend a bit of time in the animal kingdom, sort of highlighting the overlaps in skills and competencies. So if you'd like to hear more from me, please come and join me for the session, or look it up after the live streaming. So I wish you all well. I wish you all a wonderful conference this year, and hope to connect with you virtually. Thank you.
Fantastic. So some really interesting and thought-provoking ideas there from Victoria about waste and how that might apply to not only the sort of work that we're streamlining in our work as BAs, but also our BA work itself, which does beg the question, do we need to do some business analysis on business analysis from time to time without getting too meta, without getting too sort of cyclical and repetitive? So thank you very much, Victoria, for that really, really interesting insight. Well, that brings us pretty much to the end of episode 7. So all that's really left for me to say is that we have our next and final session at 2:30 today. Just before we close, I do need to remind you, of course, about the competition. I know you've heard about this multiple times before, but just in case someone's missed it, there's a fantastic competition going on right up until the end of the conference. If you would like to have the chance of winning a free ticket to the BA Conference 2021, whether that's in person, whether it's virtual, you can do so. You can have that chance. All you need to do is get active on social media, post something with the hashtag BA2020 to LinkedIn or Twitter. Always great if you have a photo or a diagram, or maybe even some notes that you've created, and every single update will count as an entry in the competition. So you can enter as many times as you like, The prize winner will be drawn shortly after the conference ends, and the winner will be notified within a day or so of that draw being made. So do make the best of that, make the most of that competition. Enter a few times. Why not? It's also a great way of connecting with others. So we are back at 2:30. You'll want to mark your calendar for that as well, where it'll be the final episode. It'll be our chance to say sort of goodbye from the BA Conference Europe Extra team. We'll be discussing analysis on the spectrum. So if you missed Mark Cross's session, you might want to tune in for that and just get a little bit of a taster of what he discussed. And also, more terrifyingly, my producer says he's got a surprise for me. I have no idea what that is. I'm dreading it. So let's find out what that surprise is on the final episode at 2:30. So I will leave you now to get back to your lunch. Enjoy the rest of the conference and see you back here at 2:30.